I have the honor today to speak with an individual who served the city of Newport Beach with a distinguished 37-year career as a lifeguard. He recently retired as Chief Lifeguard in Newport Beach. Welcome, Mike Halphide. How are you, sir?
Hey, Mike. Pleasure to be on with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So pleasure's all mine, first of all. How is, 37 years as a lifeguard, how is retirement treating you?
It's been an interesting thing, having had a regimented scheduled life for so long, to be able to really switch back and have an open schedule. I'm trying to build a little bit of routine, get back on a fitness, enjoy that lady that lives in my house, and spend some time with my family. So far, so good.
That lady being the better half, correct?
Yes, it's my wife, Tracy.
Yes. Hello, Tracy. Good job, Tracy. Real quick, can you turn your volume down just a touch? It's, and I'll edit this out. Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. So, Mike, as with any distinguished career, sometimes people want to know what kicked all this off, how you became this great lifeguard, what started it. So I actually like with my guests to go way back to where you were raised, where you starting building, those childhood to adolescent to adult behaviors, the mindset, your morals, ethics, all that good stuff. So where did you start as a little kid?
So I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, in the far northwest part in Northridge, where literally we had our street, one more street, and then it was wide open space. There was a couple blocks of graded home sites, but after that it was orange fields and off to the mountains. And so I was one of four boys, and my parents were awesome. They kept us really busy as having children. Now I understand why we went to every sports camp and that. And it's really a pretty ideal setting. Both my parents, really hard workers. My dad worked in aerospace. My mom worked for the Cal State system, and really gave us a pretty awesome base for our middle class upbringing, but a lot of sports. We were involved in church, and so had a good basis for that. I went to Catholic school 12 years. So that was definitely formative for me. Of just, I could appreciate the accountability that was asked of me, because coming out of high school, Mike, I was a 2.2 student, kind of got along. But when I got to college, I realized that from high school, I had already been exposed to these ideas and read it. And really, once it kind of clicked in with, I kind of came of age in sports and had some success in swimming and water polo, the work ethics that I learned in the pool, suddenly able to turn around. And by the time I graduated from UCI, I had a 3.0. I went to graduate school and had like a 3.5. And so really, I was kind of academically a slow starter, but I love learning. I still focus on learning now. We moved out to Yorba Linda in '77. And to me, after living in the Valley, it was a beach community. You could take the bus to the beach or ride your bike. And so we came down to Newport all the time. It was just such an amazing place. And then I was swimming at Golden West, trying to be a pool lifeguard had City of Anaheim had turned me down the year before, and a friend said, well, why don't you come try out for Newport? And we'd gone to the beach, but it never even occurred to me that you could actually be an ocean lifeguard. And that's probably a unique thing of our profession, that very few people go into it and say, hey, I'm going to be an ocean lifeguard for my career, let alone if people even know it exists. And I started as a lifeguard in 1984. I worked on the bay in my first year. So I had one day at Tower 20 on the ocean. Everything else I was facing backwards and rescuing beach balls and toddlers. But that first day I worked, I was at Tower 20. I wasn't really sure of what I was doing. I ran down and knew keep people away from the pier. And it's kind of on my last day, I was sitting in my office and looking 50 yards away from that tower that in 37 years, I've come about 100 yards. But yeah, what an experience to be able to come through. My biggest worry when I retired, Mike, was that I was going to wake up and I was suddenly going to be in a cubicle selling insurance or something else, because it's kind of a dreamlike career to be able to come from Yorba Linda, just to be able to spend every day working at the beach and particularly not only for the city, which is an outstanding organization, but for the Newport Beach Lifeguards. It's an organization just about to celebrate our centennial next year. Just a lot of tradition, history. It's like playing for the Yankees in baseball. Sorry for our Dodger fans here, but just really a lot of history and one of the leading departments in California.
Wow. So if I may interject, so first of all, Catholic school, I actually went from 7th grade through college. So I can definitely understand the discipline there. And as you and I were growing up, there was a lot more discipline back in the 70s, early 80s. So I have some funny stories about that, ex-nuns and fathers clamping down on you. Interesting on the grade aspect. I was kind of the opposite. I got really good grades in high school, got into a bunch of schools. After a year at Marymount Palos Verdes, I transferred to USD, University of San Diego. By the time I graduated, I had the attitude of C's get degrees. So no problem with the 2.2 in high school. I can jive with that. Like you said, though, it's what matters is how you're progressing and improving and constantly learning. So I'm definitely down with that. It's starting Tower 20, which I believe is just south of headquarters, right? Newport Pier.
Right.
Very
right.
cool.
Just south of the pier, the busy spot on a south swell that pushes people in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, remember that big was Hurricane Marie that came in at the point that was just roping. All the pros are out. And I've never seen the water move as fast that day as that day. It's sick.
I remember driving up that day and just watching people just get blown from 19th Street through the pier, just thinking, well, there's nothing we're going to do. We're just going to go to the other side of the pier and fish them out. But yeah, it's just pretty impressive, the amount of force that can come on our beaches at times.
Oh, exactly. Mother Nature, I've been doing martial arts my whole life, no big deal, but at least you can kind of tap and generally people will stop beating on you. Mother Nature, she has no care whatsoever. She will pound you down. So yeah, I take that wholeheartedly. So you were Tower 20, I believe. And thank you for supplying all the information. That was awesome. And so it was 1984. And then 4 years later, and you were seasonal. And then 4 years later, you became full-time. Is that correct?
Right. And so this is another case of me kind of falling upwards. I had finished going to UCI. I was went and traveled, went to New Zealand and Australia and came back, was looking for a job and just came in. I worked a 6-month assignment for the lifeguards. And at the end, come October, the saddest time of the year for a lifeguard, like, what am I going to do in the winter? Is it pumpkin patch in the tree yard or ski patrol? And somebody ended up leaving, and there was all these people ahead of me. And just by circumstance, they all kind of left. And Chief Jacobson, Brent, my partner's father, said, hey, would you like to work year round? So it was great. I worked 52 weeks a year. I was a seasonal lifeguard. I made $30,000 a year. So 1990. So it was doing pretty well.
That's not bad. In 1990.
Nope, I was going to school, getting a master's degree in counseling psychology, and the plan was to just become a marriage family therapist, and the lifeguard thing would help me through. And by the time I got done and managed care and realized how much I loved being a lifeguard, and I've been there since. And it's just I was a training officer for a while. That was really interesting. I worked with Renee Boyer.
Oh, yes.
In the junior guard program. Really, it was like working with John Wooden, just seeing that a true master of their craft and watching how they do it. And I still see Renee, and always have just tried to keep a lot of her mindset to help develop me as a leader and just be more understanding, more listening. Renee was really good at listening and that, but she was also one of those people that was really nice until she said, nope, this is what we're doing. And she was really, you could see why she built such an amazing program.
Right. Was steadfast in her ways. Hey, laws of attrition, that's what helped you move up the ladder. That's good. And you were steadfast. So you mentioned your master's in psychology. Outstanding, first of all. Second of all, did you feel that education, specifically psychology, helped you in ways when you were working with the public, working with colleagues, interagencies, et cetera, within the city of Newport Beach? Did that help kind of as far as?
Absolutely. It helped me understand a couple things that very early on, we recognized the need for mental health with public safety, lifeguards, and that. I had a drowning my second year.
Ooh.
There's in the spring, there's an open tower. I was at 10th Street and 15th, and we met out. We grabbed him, put him on the boat, did CPR, no masks back then, and it was pretty horrific. And the gentleman passed away, and they sent me back to my tower, dropped me off. I sat there, just my head spinning. I've been a lifeguard for about 14 months and thinking, what the hell just happened? And it was about an hour later, a unit came up, and one of the unit operators was like, so what happened? Well, he probably drowned. And that was kind of the mental health care. And so having that background has helped me really understand the need to debrief on incidents. We have a peer support team now in lifeguards and in the fire department that we've deployed down to Encinitas. And so it's really helped kind of, the focus has been there, but helped drive that of like mental health issues for it. And then working with the public, we learn a lot about de-escalation, and we do a lot of training with our lifeguards, particularly over the last couple of years, right? That everyone is already wrapped tight. They're ready to tee off. God forbid you ask somebody to do something that lifeguard, when we were closing the beaches about a year ago or less, people were pissed. People were yelling at our lifeguards, and that's tough. It's one thing for me as a salty 50-year-old guy to take it, and I've had people yell at me. I ref AYSO soccer. Doesn't affect me, but we have our young men and women out there who are trying to protect the public, trying to help them, and they get a lot of blowback. And so we've given them the tools to learn to de-escalate, to personalize it, and really impressive if you go out, and I know you spend time on our beaches, just to watch the interactions, whether they're a casual request for information or it's a hotly contested thing. Really, our lifeguards are experts at trying to de-escalate and manage the public in a positive way. And I think a lot of that came from just the training we had in social services, in psychology, in understanding customer service. And we have a very educated workforce too. So they really understand these concepts and can put them into action.
Right. So rewind real quick. Did you mean to say 14 years, or did the drowning incident happen after 14 months?
After 14 months, it was my second year. I was working in the spring, and it was, it's still, 36 years ago, and it's still pretty vivid for me. And so that's some of the things that we recognize now that, what we do, it's amazing. You get to work at the beach, you work with your friends, you work in a high performing environment, but there's some costs, there's some scars. I've got scars on my body from different injuries, but I've got some emotional scars from different rescues and calls and things that are always going to be there. And you just have to learn to acknowledge it, and that's part of you, and that acknowledge that as part of the experience.
Well, absolutely. God bless, God, Ben Carlson and his family. I mean, there's a big scar right there. I don't know if you knew this, but I had a life after death experience in a horrible car crash when I was 18. I was gone. I say dots, dead on the spot. And I went up to the lights, did the whole thing, came back, and then I was paralyzed for about 1 minute from the neck down. You want to talk about a very scary, humbling experience. And my head was whacked open. I'm blinking my eyes just to clear the blood. Not to get too graphic here, but every day I wake up, that humbles me to obviously be a better person and not do stupid things as I was growing up later on after that. But then it just, like you said, every day it's with me, and I don't forget it. And I can remember to a freaking minute that entire accident. And so I, in a different realm, completely understand what you're saying.
Right. And just being able to process that and know it's never going away. You can control how you see it in that, but really understanding that and having that post-traumatic growth where you're using it to really build upon, become better.
Right.
Really important.
Yeah. And to the psychology aspect, not to dwell too much on myself, but if it helps others listening, my car accident, my experience, I thought it was like crazy or something. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even tell my own family for at least 10 years. I kept it to myself. And then I read all these life after life and life after death books. And then I'm like, wait a minute, we've got millions of same exact examples, just a little different all around the world. I can't be that crazy. I'm a little cuckoo at times, but yeah. So I roger that. So, well, and thank you for everything in your service, Mike. The city had an outstanding individual. So you mentioned sports earlier, and I think I heard swimming, water polo, and whatnot. I want to touch upon that because I always grew up with sports, and I think sports is an excellent opportunity for people to learn from one another. The coach kid interaction, like, teacher student, to hopefully that works out well. Sometimes it doesn't, but anyways, you can learn a lot from sports and working with other individuals. And usually most sports are a team effort. There are some individual aspects, but anyways, so why don't you touch upon you were this great swimmer and water polo player. If you could just touch upon briefly how that helped mold you as well in your mindset.
Sure. So, started swimming as a kid and just was naturally good at it. Unlike pretty much any other sport I had tried, I was kind of big and slow, but I got in the water and just had a real innate feel for it. And then 7th grade, I discovered this game called water polo, and it's everything I loved. You could be physical. It was swimming. I went and played in high school. After high school, I went and played and kind of bounced around. I went to Cal State Fullerton, set the school scoring record, which is less impressive than you might think because they disbanded the team the year after.
Well, then your record will live forever.
Right. I went to Golden West and really focused on swimming, and dropped my times into like a 143. And so I was a good community college level swimmer, and then transferred to UCI to play water polo. And that actually came via lifeguarding. My first year, my supervisor was Ted Newland. He was the UCI water polo coach, and he's a Bay supervisor at Lifeguards, and saw me swim on my break one day, and it kind of fit the mold of Newland's animal farm. I was big and fast, and I claimed and played for Newland and played for 3 years, and it was outstanding. He was really one of the more formative things. I showed up the first morning a couple minutes early for a 6 a.m. workout. I realized I was about 30 to 40 minutes late. We worked out every morning. Workout started at 6. You better be in the weight room by 5:30. We lifted, we swam, we did core workout, and then we'd go work out in the evening. And it was a genius program because we worked out from 5:30 to 8:30 in the morning, and then 6:30 to 9:30 at night. And after that, you went home, you ate, went to bed, and started again. So really kind of kept us on the straight and narrow. But Ted Newland was just the hardest working man who really had a focus on outworking the competition. We worked out double days year round. So we're in January at Newport Harbor to 8:30 at night. It's freezing cold. And we knew we were the only team in the United States playing water polo at that moment. And so when you work out like that, it gives you that confidence that you may not be better than them, but you've prepared. And so that's really an ethos that's been with me. I may not be the fastest or best, but I can prepare and I can persist. And so you just learn that you just keep going. And late in the game, we were not a subbing team. Newland, we'd play Cal, and they'd be throwing 3 guys over and world-class sprinters. And we had one sub because Newland didn't believe in subbing. Why not have your best people out there? So you really learn to work, to endure, and that you're capable of so much more. The things that I learned about myself after that just gave me an irrational confidence that I could pretty much work my way out of almost anything. And that's been really helpful. And the other part is persistent. You just have to be there every day. Mm-hmm. You can have a great practice, but if you're not there tomorrow morning, it really doesn't mean anything. And so that persistence, and that's a hard lesson to teach young people as we come up. And I think it's one of the more important, that it's not always going to be like this. You just keep pushing on. And if you keep at it, things are going to be okay. It's not quick, but persistence is not really a popular concept right now.
No, it's not. And for several reasons that, this podcast is not that, so we'll not get into it. But I absolutely agree with you 100%. Back in the day, as they say, we didn't have internet. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have all these distractions. There were distractions, but nothing like today. And some of those are good, but, progress is always good and change. But a lot of it is disruptive, in my opinion. And like you said, we've watered down the system. Like, I played football. We didn't have water polo at my high school. And I remember from Pop Warner being a little kid, Pee Wee, Mighty White, all the way up to varsity football. Coaches could throw balls at your head. They could grab your face mask, shake you. They could knock you on the ground. I'm not exaggerating. It did.
Nope.
That went down. And I'm sure in water polo, I've heard the stories about your coach. Things got kind of, things would get gnarly. I can't speak for that. I wasn't involved with that. But my point is the discipline and the dedication to, like you said, you could score 5 goals, shut people down, be the fastest swimmer, blah, blah, blah. But if you don't show up the next day, what good is it? It's like sales. You could do a $1 million sale, but what do you got going the next day? Doesn't matter. It may say on hardcore, but that's reality. That's the real world. And so I think you and I have a different mindset about that than unfortunately, some of these younger kids growing up. And I'm also speaking from experience from my wife's company, who has to hire a lot of people. And she's just shocked at some of these people that come in unprepared, don't know what they're trying to apply for. And then they expect all these benefits and steep pay and all that right off the bat when you haven't even spent 1 hour, showing who you are. So not to get too far off a soapbox here, but I agree with you 100% that it's a different, let's touch upon that real quick. So as you were getting later in your career as a lifeguard, could you see a shift as far as future boys and girls coming in? Did you see a little difference from generation to generation in that kind of aspect?
We do see a difference. One of the benefits that we get is our raw material. They're all swimmers. They're all water polo players. So they come in with, I would say, an above average level of discipline and work ethic, because even Michael Phelps has to work out hard to be the best. So that's the thing with swimming. There's no natural talents. And so I think that we do see it now, but that's one of our roles now as leaders, mentors, as men and women, is to teach these young people the importance of this. And here's why. And that's part of our development program. We hire completely from within. So if we don't teach those skills, our future leaders won't have it. And so we've specifically started teaching some of these life skills, and we teach it in formal trainings. We teach it in online, but a lot of mentoring that goes on, and that we used. Your son, Brandon, is the lifeguard with us. We have people that work with him, and he is mentored, and then he turns around and, being in the truck, he's responsible for 5 towers. He's going to mentor them. And so it's a lot of kind of old school person-to-person transmission of ideas rather than formal learning, or certainly not embraced by the culture.
Got it. Yeah, Braden loves the program. He just finished his 6th season, I believe, as a seasonal. He's definitely looking forward possibly someday to drive the truck and help out in that aspect, as far as also being in the Upper West Newport Towers. But yeah, he loves it. And I don't know if you were that one year he was working down. I think it was the same year that triathlete swimmer gal got attacked by the great white off Corona del Mar.
Okay.
I think a week later, that incident, Braden had to go out in that swim towards that same area and save 2 people from drowning. They were both intoxicated. The husband and wife decided to have a fight in the ocean, further out, not just shoreline, out in the ocean, intoxicated, and they decided to have an argument, and it got physical, and Braden had to run out, separate them, and then one of them tried to dunk them, and it was like playing water polo. It's like it's set, and he handled the situation perfectly, and he I guess he told the lady she was okay to come in, and the guy started drowning, so he brought him in. And I guess his supervisor at the time, and I don't know if you came down for that, but they all gave him the high fives. And then some people, which was really cool, some of the neighbors saw that. They came back later and gave him a bunch of cookies and food and drinks and thanked him. And I was like, Braden, outstanding. That sense of purpose and that accomplishment, awesome. And not to talk about my son so much, but that goes right back to you, Mike, and your program and all you guys and gals, how you raise these young men and women to represent the city. It's a great, you guys, I'm so jealous I didn't have this opportunity. It's an awesome program. Absolutely.
Well, and that story kind of bookends the 2 great parts of our job. One, you get an interesting front row seat on humanity, right? That just, you have that story. Okay, so they're in the water and then fighting, and it's things that you wouldn't ever imagine if we gave you a year to think of what could happen. And then you're 16, 17 years old. Now your job is to come and, all right, well, now we have to stop fighting. Now we have to kind of separate them. Now we have to rescue them, right? So that's the first part. And then there's a lot of crap that you just have to deal with people and trying to get them. A lot of people that we deal with are intoxicated. And so all the rationalizing and trying to just get people to do. But then in the end, not only is our community so supportive of us, but they'll come and not only did they pay you to be there, but they're going to bring you cookies and thank you. And it's that camaraderie with all the other lifeguards who they like, hey, we saw what you did. Great job on that. That's what makes our job great is one, it's very interesting between being at the beach and dealing with the public and then just being supported, right? Not every lifeguard agency has that. And it's very special to be in Newport.
Absolutely. Me as a surfer who surfed up and down the state and down in Mexico and Mex and all over, and Hawaii's got a good program. But you absolutely you just nailed it. There's some programs you're like, ooh, okay, I see what's going on. And like you've touched upon in the past, I believe you mentioned how going to the junior lifeguard program, teaching these little kids from age 9 D level all the way up to 15 to the academy or A level or whatever.
Right.
That even if they don't become lifeguards, they are in a sense their own lifeguard and are so much aware of their situational awareness and ocean safety. So then when they go places, like I became that through surfing and almost drowning a few times surfing big waves, I'm pretty in tune with the ocean and reading the water and the currents and animal life and the tides, blah, blah, blah. So topography. Anyway, so yeah, that's an awesome program about that. So I'm losing my train of thought here, but in any event, let's touch upon junior guards. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So junior lifeguards is a force multiplier for us. People often think it's a feeder program, which it has, but that's really an offshoot. The program is really designed so these 9 to 15-year-olds learn about the ocean, work on their physical fitness, work on their confidence, and to be able to become ambassadors for us. We get all sorts of calls and letters as the chief saying, hey, junior guard Maddie Smith was out here and she was telling my kids to stay away from the rip current, and lifeguard came and helped us. And they're just out there talking and teaching their parents. And, somebody like you who didn't get the chance to grow up here, there's things that your son learned in junior guards that comes home and share. You're like, oh, awesome. I know many parents have started looking through the manual because not everyone has that ocean savviness that if you didn't grow up here. So that's such an important part. The other thing that the junior guard program does, it's a character development. And it starts from the first step that they actually have to make us time standard to enter the program. At that age, at 9 years old, baseball, ballet, martial arts, there's nothing that has like a standard year in or out. So that's the first thing. That's when they value that suddenly, they were swimming in November and they're doing 3-minute 100 freeze. They keep getting faster and they finally get that. I did a 154, right? That excitement in their eyes, tears in their parents' eyes because it's so stressful. Mm-hmm. But then as they get in, it's the discipline. It's the Mr. Halphide, Mr. Postel. It's the yes, no. It's doing push-ups when they forget, tucking their shirts in. All these things build that character, but it's done in a way that's fun with a lot of love and enthusiasm from the instructors. And that's really the key to that program is those 20-year-old instructors. They're amazing young people. As you know, you have children. Mm-hmm. 20-year-olds, they don't quite have it all figured out. But to these 10-year-olds, they're the most amazing person in the world. I heard about Mr. Hill, Carson Hill, 100 times when my son Jackson was a D. And when he got to work with him on the harbor, it's just one of those things that they have those relationships that they start and they really look up and they'll remember their B junior guard instructor probably more than their 4th grade teacher.
Oh, absolutely. I agreed 100%. No disrespect to you teachers out there. My mom was a teacher. But to touch upon that, yeah, absolutely. And speaking from a dad's perspective of 3 boys and Braden, again, the lifeguard, all 3 of my boys did the junior lifeguard program, which is fantastic in Newport Beach at Balboa Pier, AAB Street area. But first of all, doing that test, you're right. starting to create these, they got to get these modifiers going to pass tests in the entry level. And I think it's more stressful on the parents than it is the kids. You see these parents on the pool deck pacing back and forth and stressing, and then the exaltation when the kid passes. It's a cool thing. And then going about the lifeguards, it's cool about the junior guards, because then, you know what, you are creating a bond with these junior lifeguard instructors, which are lifeguards, that are teaching these kids. So, for example, Blake, my youngest son, he's 17, Newport Harbor High School junior. He's 6'3", 200 now. But he'll go out and either body womp surf, whatever, and he'll run into lifeguards and like, Postal, you gonna be joining or what? What's going on? And it's funny because, you know, they know Braden, and they're like, you're Braden's, or guys they'll recognize Blake and go, you're Braden's brother, right? Yeah, I better see you at the tryouts. So it's a fun thing. It's cool. And then you have families.
It's a really neat community to be part of, for sure.
Absolutely. And then you have families that have multiple kids that are in the program now in the system. So, it's neat to see. It's neat to see like these young kids grow up, and now they're contributing to society, and more specifically the city of Newport Beach as lifeguards. That's pretty cool.
Well, and they go on to do all sorts of things. You know, it's like we see the lifeguards, but there's all these other people come back, and whether they're going to business school, they're going to this, they're going into careers, but they're able to enjoy the beach and be safe at it, which as a parent, right, that's the thing that we're most concerned about. Just have a good day and be safe, right? It just gives them that margin of safety, and not only for themselves, but for others that are there.
Absolutely. And you touched upon beach safety. I believe I mentioned this to you. I had a really good childhood friend from a very famous Hollywood family. Unfortunately, he was 15. I was 14. I wasn't there when this happened, but I grew up with him. Awesome, humble. It seems like they're always the good ones. No disrespect to the other kids, but long story short, he got buried alive in a sand pit up in Pismo Beach, and unfortunately expired. And that sticks with me every day too, especially when my kids were growing up playing at the beach. I'd be surfing, my wife's on the beach, and I'm still in the water looking to make sure my kids are okay, and my wife's on it, and vice versa when she's in the water. So that was tough. And I'm bringing that up because you guys had that really hardcore incident, I believe, up in Upper West Newport, kind of close to River Jetties, maybe like 65th, 68th area, where that kid he got buried in a hole. Is that right?
Yeah. So, and if you don't have an experience like you do, it's hard to keep those seemingly incongruent thoughts of digging a hole and life threatening in the same concept. And so we have to talk to people about that. But that day that we had the collapse, his name was Tony. He was digging down and 54th Street, and they dug about 9 feet down. And only because his friends had been with him and they were digging, they realized how far down it was. And then he started to go transverse, and everything, eventually the moisture dries out, the elasticity of the walls fails, and it collapses. And so their friends came to the lifeguard and just said, "Hey, do you have a shovel?" It's like, "Well, what do you need?" "Well, our friend is buried in the sand." Oh, and so I was one of the first units to respond. I was the initial supervisor. We called for everything that we could, and thinking this kid is 9 feet down. That's cubic yards, right? That's not easy to move.
That's deep.
So we have people, and we had fortunately had a couple other incidents where we didn't have a fatality. And so we had improved and trained on our response. So we have our lifeguards in the middle, and they're digging with fins, with Homer buckets, just like you get at Home Depot, to make sure there's nothing sharp or injurious near the victim. And so then the problem is, as you move that sand away, it starts to move up, and you're pushing sand uphill. So we have 3 concentric rings that move sand away. And that day we had lifeguards, we had surfer bros, we had guys in ties, we had Newport Beach housewives digging like it was their own kid. It was really one of the most amazing things to be part of. But having worked in emergency services, I know how the vital organs work, and you only have about 6 minutes without air to have instant start to have brain damage. And so as we're watching the clock and we're getting to 15, 20, thinking, okay, he's not going to make it. And then we have 150 people plus rescuers who have been out here part of this, and we're going to have to pull him up. And at that point, it's a crime scene, so we're going to leave him there. And so I was thinking, this is going to be horrible. How are we going to debrief 150 members of the public that have been working so hard, and suddenly they're going to just have this dead 19-year-old? But we found him. Surprisingly, he was breathing. He had apparently found a void, so he was able to get a little air. By the time they got him up, he was in and out of consciousness. We drove him to the back. By the time he was in the ambulance, he was completely conscious. By the time he got to the hospital, he is oriented times 4, which means he knew where he was, what happened, and all that. That was an amazing call. It's been covered by the Weather Channel, and just that he lived is still just statistically impossible, but it happened.
An anomaly, big time for survival, but thank God, yes, he survived, and amazing. I truly believe miracle there. Whatever you guys' faith or whatever you believe in, absolutely, that was outstanding. I remember that, and I think I was working stuck somewhere. Otherwise, I probably would have drove down and tried and helped you guys. So, wow, outstanding that you guys did that. Great job, unreal. So you mentioned it. So if there's people that want to try out to become a lifeguard and they see the glamour of the boats, or, for lack of whatever, they have this image in their head and like, I want to be a lifeguard. I hear all these great things about the city of Newport Beach and the lifeguard program. Obviously they got to do that test and whatnot, but, if you want to just lay down the expectations, hey, here's how it's going to start and here's how possibly things could go. If you want to touch upon that briefly?
Sure. So our training typically goes across 5 weekends, and then they get some time in the tower. And it just starts with the basics. First, we expect you to be physically fit. That's what the swim test is for. So everyone getting to that point has proven that they've got the physical ability to do it. But then it's a matter of they do emergency response. So it's first aid training that's not quite EMT, but it's close. They'll do physical training and rescue drills. We'll do physical events. And then we do a lot of customer service. And they're quizzed every day. First thing you do when you walk in is you get a quiz. And you are asked whatever you were asked the night before. And so it's really demanding. It's not only physically, but it's mentally demanding. But first couple of days, it's overwhelming. By the third or fourth day, they get that collegiality with the other staff and with the other candidates. And by the time they're done, they're just so roped into the program. And when we'll bring people in and talk, and it really almost sounds like we're pushing our cult, because you're going to have some guy come in, no, dude, it's chill. Everyone there is really cool. We're here to help you. But it's true. And the next person comes in and she says, no, it's really professional. And it's just, they get hooked at that point because, and then they go sit in the tower with a real lifeguard, and they realize that no matter how good of a student they were, there's so much more they have to deal with, because you're really trying to manage the human condition and dealing with people, dealing with the ocean dynamics. Depending on where you are, the surf in West Newport is different than the dynamics at the Wedge, different than what we'll see at Corona del Mar. So they really just, for their first year, they're just learning a ton, but it's a very positive environment. I'm so proud of that, because that was not the environment that you and I grew up in. It was that same coaches, grab your face mask, tell you what an idiot you were. And it's probably true. but it's that where we have to come back and really just mentor people and help them through that learning. And that's one of the challenges we get, where people aren't used to being told, no, that wasn't right. Or you come and you realize, that wasn't right. And you said the ocean shows no mercy. So you pay your dues, and it's really an interesting thing, because about halfway through your second year, typically a light bulb comes off and you just see it all, and you understand what that lifeguard was telling you about, and how you notice people coming onto the beach and say, okay, that person's going to be a rescue. I'm going to go talk to them now. And so those changes in their mindset into a more proactive, right? That's probably the biggest thing, that people have a mistaken view of sitting and just kicking back and waiting. If you watch those lifeguards, they're out there, They're sizing people up. They're talking. They're scanning. They're doing it all with a chill vibe that the kids have, but they're there. They're watching. They're paying attention. They're sizing up everything that's going on in their area.
As your junior lifeguard instructors would say, super epic. So as far as sizing things up, situational awareness and being aware of your surroundings, God forbid there's an incident that involves law enforcement. And you can see Newport Beach's finest, as they say, driving up and down in the trucks and sometimes on the ATVs, the four-wheelers, but and bikes as well. How would a lifeguard working in a tower who then gets involved in some sort of incident that needs further assistance, he or she cannot talk their way out of it, like my son's done a bunch, and as you've mentioned, de-escalate things. Now it's gone to another level where, like you said, concentric circles of security, or your OODA loop, for those out there that are in the security business. How are they going to get a hold? I mean, everyone has cell phones nowadays, but is there the phones in the towers? Can they get that code 3 call? What do you do?
Right. So all our towers have phones. If they also will have portable radios in some of them in the trucks. And what we hope is hopefully they identify things early, that even if they're not sure, if it's not come down to a law enforcement thing, but there's something not right, we want them to observe, call it in, maybe go down and intervene if it's safe, go and try to talk to somebody. If you have somebody harassing somebody, try to at least separate them and try to de-escalate it. But if not, our partners in the police, if we call for them, they're down there and they're really good in terms of dealing with things on the lowest level needed to change the behavior. And I appreciate the challenge that our police are in this thing of everyone's got a cell phone, everyone's going to scream that it's discrimination or you're singling them out, but you're just asking them to follow it. And so we ask them to identify those issues early, and if need be, call it in and identify that you could always back up. The one escape hatch that all lifeguards have is we just tell them to go in the water. That there's very few problems that most lifeguards aren't going to be able to manage in the water. That if somebody, no matter how tough you are on the sand and how not tough you are as a lifeguard, once you get into your element in the water, it changes everything. And usually at that point, people aren't going to pursue you because they realize it's not going to go well for them. And the nice thing about being on the peninsula or most of our beaches too, you're not going anywhere. That you're not going to get off the peninsula, that we know. We'll just wait and call the police and be a good witness rather than a bad victim.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. The water polo, swimming, surfing, being in the ocean, great training modifier, right? I mean, because you're taking away the feet, and you got to learn how to egg beat, side swim, all that kind of stuff. And it's like you said, you wonder why the SEALs down in Coronado and then in Virginia, they like to get guys out of the tank, so to speak, from water polo, because it's amazing.
Yeah, we've had quite a few lifeguards go on to be SEALs, and while it is tough, they have such building blocks just of being humbled by the ocean, by being in a somewhat rigorous program, that when they take it to the next level, obviously it's a lot harder, but they've got such a good foundation. They're very successful.
Excellent. So I want to touch upon, if it's all right, I pulled off the internet some statistics. The latest I could get was 2020, not 2021. So it covers, I pulled it from the city website. It covers 2020 lifeguard activity. So as of that, which is unique year too, as you mentioned earlier, that was our pandemic COVID year, as far as beaches shutting down. A lot of the LA, again, for those listening, maybe in other parts of the country, we are in Orange County, California, specifically right now, Newport Beach. This is the Newport Beach Lifeguard Program, City of Newport Beach. And in 2020, they closed all the beaches in LA County, and I believe a good chunk of San Diego as well, San Diego County. So what happened is a lot of people were coming in and wanting to just bomb in on Huntington and Newport, and it was like such an increase of traffic. There was nowhere to park, tons of people on the beach. And I get it. People are trying to live their lives and adjust to this shutdown of everything. But maybe some of that had to do with these numbers I'm about to rattle off here. So if you're a statistical geek, here you go. Lifeguard activity 2020, total calls, 189,033. 12% increase on a 5-year annual average. And 3 times the amount of calls were in May 2020. It says here aquatic preventative actions. Maybe you can elaborate on that. 96,290. And out of all the hours that were put in, there was 3,310 rescues. That sound about right?
Right. Yeah. So that's normal. We have, about 100,000 preventative actions per year. And that's a lifeguard going down, either physically moving somebody or talking to them, advising them of rip currents, of dangerous conditions of shore break. And then the rescue is actually where we go out and physically assist someone getting back to shore. And 3,000 sounds like a lot, but to put it in perspective, about 10% of those people that if we had not been there, 90% probably would have made it back, or somebody like yourself would have grabbed them, but 10% of them would have drowned. Right. And so those numbers start to add up, and where lifeguards not there, that they would close our beaches down. Revenue and everything would be gone because nobody would be willing to have that many deaths on their beaches per year. So It's really important what the lifeguards do. And I love stats. We have the best statistics of any lifeguard agency in the world. And that's not just me saying it, but we work with some researchers, and with our computer dispatch system, we record our data not only with the location, the time, and the activity. So it really helps us go back and look at our trends, look at year over year, look by areas and see what things are key. And so I love statistics, and it really helps paint that picture of what our lifeguards do.
Cool. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to hit a couple others. So I said sure. Lifeguard coverage, 98,338. That was patrolled hours. And then out of the patrolled hours, you had a total amount of calls. Maybe I did mention. Yeah, I did. I think I did mention that. I did 100 over almost 190,000. Visitation, this is a lot. Yeah, for 2020, 8,261,050. That's a lot of people coming into the city.
Well, and that includes our beaches being closed during part of that period. So
that's tremendous amount. And for those that are wondering, well, hey, what happens when the sun takes a nap and goes down? Is there any patrols, what's going on, et cetera, other than law enforcement? And it states here that you guys, Lifeguard Department, you have nighttime call out responses. And in that year, there were 87 in 2020.
Right. And so our call outs, it's kind of juxtaposed of what people typically think of the guy sitting there in the middle of summer, in the middle of the afternoon. We have 2 lifeguards that are always on call. And so they're called out for aquatic emergencies, for medical emergencies, for boating or maritime problems. And so just imagine that you're asleep in your home. It's 2:15 because it always starts after 2 a.m. Your pager goes off. And so you have to figure out what the call is. Grab your gear, you head out, and you're responding code 3. So a couple of minutes ago, you're fast asleep now. It always amazed me because I go to bed early. I'd be driving by Malarkey's at like 1:30 in the morning, and there's a line. It's just surprising that people are out. But you're showing up at whatever the emergency is. When you have to get in the water, it's real clear. You have about a dozen cops and firefighters there, and they're all pointing, saying, yep, there you go. Other times you're there just to support the operation. And it's really interesting. Suddenly come back, and 3:30 in the morning, I get back to bed. My wife had no idea I was even gone. So,
wow.
So it's an interesting part of lifeguarding that's really in that permanent ranks.
And you mentioned 2 things. You mentioned your wife, the better half. No disrespect to you. And then Malarkey's. You met your wife at Malarkey's, right?
I did. I was 21 years old, UCI water polo stud, and I ran into her and her friend, and we sat, and she bought a pitcher, and I knew she really got me. And we got married in 1990, and we've been married since. We've got 3 kids, 2 23-year-old twins, a boy and girl, and then my youngest 21-year-old that, God willing, he's graduating from Santa Barbara in June.
A gaucho, huh? Awesome.
Yes.
Well, hey, who says you can't find long-lasting love out of a bar, right?
That's true.
That's why I met my wife at a bar. So that's funny. That's actually cool. So out of these call responses, and this is the last statistical geek stuff I'm going to do. So you have minor first aid events, 1,467. major medical aid events, 259, animal warnings, 5,523. So if we can, I can figure out the minor. What would getting jabbed with the barb of a stingray considered minor first aid event?
That would actually be in its own category. And so we have about 500 stingray wounds per year on average.
500. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Right. Two of my boys.
And if you've had it, it's not minor.
Yeah, no, it sucked. Well, I can't speak of that. Surfing in Hawaii in certain breaks, as they say, vana or the sea urchins, I've had tons of, they're like needles that break off in your feet. I've had that before and it sucks. But I've never had knock on wood, a barb. Two of my boys have though. So let's see here. Major medical events, I would assume one would be like, for example, the kid that you guys had to dig out. Fortunately, he was okay after time, and probably maybe some cardiac arrests on the beach, near drownings, that kind of stuff, right? Lacerations.
Yeah, it's
cutting.
Major lacerations, anything that you have to be treated with the paramedics. Probably for us, the most challenging call are spinal injuries.
Oh, yeah.
There's two parts for that. Right. One, it happens in areas with really dynamic surf conditions. So it could be in big surf in West Newport, could be in shore break in Balboa, but it's also that it really mimics the demographics of our staff. So they're treating somebody who looks like them. It's not an old person. It's suddenly a 16-year-old kid who was just body surfing and hit his head wrong, and now he's not able to move. So that's probably one of the more challenging ones. And there's not a lot you can do until you get a lot of people. So you're there doing your best, trying to move them out of the surf line and treat them as carefully as possible, but you're still in really challenging, hazardous conditions.
There was an incident. I can only refer to my family, but my son, Blake, my youngest one, he was doing junior guards. And, a lot of the kids get there early and they want to body surf. So when the surf's pumping and it's coming in A Street right off Balboa Pier, Blake would always like to body womp before that 0900 rang off. And he went over the falls, landed on his head, and was messed up. And you guys all mobilized, grabbed Blake, got him out of the water with pump and surf, stabilized him, put him in a ambulance and sent him to Hogue. And just the response that you guys did and the follow up was awesome. And so if I never thanked you for that, Mike, later on now, I want to thank you for that. You guys, phenomenal as a dad, first and foremost, how you guys took care of my son. And then also it was, Blake indirectly as part of your community as a junior guard. It was
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, it was really cool. Thank you. Animal warnings. Could this be anything from a dog or a pissed off cat to sea life?
So it's both. It's typically animal people with their dog off the leash or on the beach when it's not. I think the other one would be people coming down and we get our sea lions or sea life down on the beach, and people think, oh, this really looks cute, right? There's a reason the word lion is in his name for a sea lion. And they'll get close and they'll want to pet him. And so you have to move them away and explain and try to educate why this is a bad idea.
Agreed. The last thing I'll touch upon, surfer warnings, 12,589. Me being a surfer, I've witnessed hundreds of times of you guys having to call people out, me included. And I was always mindful of that and came out. I did try to stretch a little to catch that last wave, but it's interesting to see some guys that are just like, no, F it, screw you guys. I'm doing my thing and I'm surfing. Well, okay, that's fine. But it's cool to see how you guys handle that. And, the boats will come in, the trucks show up, and then if it gets pretty heated, sometimes you'll see law enforcement come down. But I think I've seen it all in 39 years of surfing.
So I've been out in the water when they blackball, and my first reaction is, God, right? And so I understand that.
Mike just raised up his arms and hand flailed back.
Sorry. But you realize now it is so much better than it used to be. We've had a couple different iterations of our blackball rules. And if you remember when you probably first started, it was from noon to 4 regardless.
Right.
And so at 12:05, boogie boarders, body surfers were there, and the surfers were out no matter what. And so we've gotten more flexibility that we can keep areas open if the surf is large or the crowds don't dictate it. So that's really helped giving the lifeguards more discretion on that captain basis so they can really oversee their area. And that's helped builds rapport with the surfers and that they know that, okay, we left it open yesterday, but today's Saturday, it's crowded, the surf's smaller, we're going to do it. And so while there are people who don't like to be told what to do, we really have a good compliance, but it's part of our community-based lifeguarding that we'll have people out in the water just backing our guys up, or somebody's giving the lifeguard a lot of lip. There's usually somebody in the public who's there and kind of has our back, and we appreciate that from the public. And part of it is just by just treating people politely, we expect the same.
Very cool. I absolutely. It's interesting. It's very cool how you guys do that kind of thing. And so I've actually saw one time a couple guys that were body surfing while I was surfing were lifeguards, and I didn't even know it. And then they're like, "Hey, bro, we're just trying to do our thing. Come on, let's go. Come on in." And then I would chime in and go, "Oh, why are you vibing these guys? Why are you sweating them? Just take your stupid butt in and go on the beach. Chill." But yeah, you guys could. The one thing though, as a surfer, that I'll speak up for surfers is 40th through 44th that is shut down from, what is that? May till October.
Yeah, 6 months. I private citizen now, have a much more ability to speak. Yeah, I think that's a poor use of a public resource, is that it belongs to everyone as part of the state of California. And I understand having certain regulations during peak times, but September, after the first week, it's very limited. Same thing in the spring. And it's just, it creates problems and it creates a forbidden fruit, so that because it's closed, it's always going to look better. That's a psychological principle, right? The grass is greener.
Yeah, no, but there are sometimes those killer combo swells that come in. And that area,
the geography of that spot.
Oh my God, that area fires.
Perfect.
And I remember I'll ride my bike up and I'm like, oh my God, I should have got out here before 7 o'clock when you guys start this thing.
So we participated. We had a black ball working group and we looked through all that. And that was one of our recommendations, was to decrease the amount of time for that. And it passed in the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation, but the city council had no interest, and they basically just 6-0 rejected it. So
wow, 6-0.
We'll try again. Okay. The problem is most of our council members, if you get to that point, you're not tied into the surf community. There may be one or more, but they just don't understand the importance of that resource. And to them, Newport Beach is the Bay or Fashion Island, and to us, it's that area from the river to the wedge.
It's your zen, your nirvana. It's you to go out, catch some waves, and then be all good the rest of the day. Yeah, if you don't surf, you don't understand, man. And so, yeah, I'm not hyping on that. I thought I'd bring it up for all the whole surf scene, the surfers out there, if they're listening to this. But
noted.
Yeah, no, all good. I'll shut up. Well, Mike, outstanding, sir. I really appreciate your time. Is there anything that I've overlooked or haven't covered you would like to touch upon regarding your illustrious 37-year career as a lifeguard for the city of Newport Beach?
Nope. Just how fortunate I have been and how blessed I feel, and kind of be at this next phase. I'm looking for different things, but I'm not really sure. I'm just trying to decompress a little bit and get out. I got in the Y and swam yesterday. I've overcoming 2 shoulder surgeries, so I'm just feeling good of getting moving and getting back to my happy, fit self.
Very cool. Well, if you ever want to go out in the ocean and surf, swim, whatever, I'm down. You're welcome to give me a call. I'd love to meet you down at the beach. But anyways, for all those who are listening, maybe want to rewind this again. Those with parents with kids that are thinking about the program, it's I've done it myself as a father and my wife. Junior Lifeguard program is an outstanding program. It's excellent. And their lifeguard program is absolutely excellent. And it's up there, as Mike said, at the top. So anyways, Mike, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate your time, and congratulations on retirement.
It's a pleasure to have the conversation.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.